Hey everyone, so for this video I'm trying something a little bit different. This is just going to be kind of an off-the-cuff discussion about accessibility and onboarding in card games, specifically about the UniVersus card game, which is a card game that's been around for a very long time, features popular franchises like My Hero Academia. We just got the Godzilla Challenger decks, and I just posted the videos covering those as well. And specifically later this year, it has the Attack on Titan manga-based set releasing, and with this set, there has been some talk from UniVersus Games about how they are really attempting to address one of what has been sort of the biggest problem with the game for a while, which has been that it's just been very difficult to, it's a difficult game to learn to play, especially to learn to play competently, and that has made it difficult for players to obviously get into the game. In this discussion, I'm going to be going over this new demo deck experience that they have. We'll be using this as sort of a visual aid to talk about some of the changes that UniVersus is making to the game, and I'm also going to talk about a little bit about my experience at the recent influencer summit that UVS Games held, where they flew a bunch of the content creators for UVS, myself included. I was fortunate enough to be included in that. Flew us all out to Las Vegas. We spent a day really communicating with the team, talking about, the things that, issues that we have, the issues the community has, the ways that we can work together to improve things. And they also gave us a pretty massive sneak peek at some of the upcoming products, including the Attack on Titan set, which gave us an idea of kind of the direction that they're going in to improve accessibility for the game. Now, I can't go through any details for any of that stuff today. We're just going to be kind of talking about at a high level about the changes, and we are going to be looking at in detail at this Aaron demo deck here. There's also a Mikasa one that you might get as well, but I'm going to try to just include little bits from that when I can. So I hope you find this. I don't talk too long here, but I hope you find this interesting nonetheless. So let's jump right into it. All right, so first of all, the first thing I want to do is just give a huge shout out to UniVersus, for UVS Games, for holding this influencer summit. This was really a last minute thing that I had about two and a half weeks maybe, just to have my schedule ready to be able to attend this event. And there were, I will say too, that there are more influencers, more content creators, maybe a better way to call it, who would have been great to have there as well, and other people in the community. But this was a very much a first step, and I know UVS Games, I know because we've talked about it, they are working on not only hosting more things like this in the future, but getting in touch with some of the other members of the community, major retailers, that kind of stuff. So I think more of that will be coming as well. Really, I view this as like a first step in the process of not only improving their communication, but helping their feedback become sort of more pointed, more refined. And I do know that the content creators who went to the summit were all very, very open with their criticism, very direct, and bringing a lot of the thoughts that the community has directly to the table here, so we could get kind of candid answers and learn a lot about what UVS Games is doing to improve the game. Now, I wanted to frame this really around accessibility, and one of the biggest problems that My Hero Academia had when it started, and then as it merged into sort of UVS Games taking over into UVS proper, as we know now that we're getting all these other Godzilla cards and everything. We have cards from Girl Power here as well. So this is a great game. This is incredible. I want to say right now, this game is incredible. This is one of the best TCGs on the market to play. It's extremely fun, extremely skill intensive. One of those games that feels very, very random until you get really good at it, and then you realize all the control you have over the game and all the skill. But look at these cards and look at the amount of stuff on them and the amount of text and the amount of things. And it's beyond just that, because I'm not just going to come out of this saying like, and I don't want the impression to be, well, what UVS Games is doing is just removing the text on the cards, because I can tell you for sure that is not the case. I have 100%. That is not what's happening. And I know better than most people right now at this point that is not what's happening to the game. But really what this is about is figuring out, how do we get this incredible game that cards like this, enable? How do we get this to be something that players can actually step into and learn, and sort of build into that complexity rather than making them feel really overwhelmed from the start? And I think also, how do we make this game just feel more intuitive to pick up? It's an extremely daunting challenge to try and make a game feel intuitive, right? Because there's no just scientific way of removing things or adding things to make it happen. You're really looking for very particular solutions to things. So a lot of the stuff, again, is stuff I can't talk about. What we're gonna look at today is this demo deck experience, and what you're gonna get after when some other products release this year. You're gonna start to see more things that are gonna lead to this game being easier for people to pick up and play without losing the incredible depth that the game has. And in fact, just I think leading people to understand the depth at a faster rate than they ever did before. Now, what UVS Games noted is that the thing that was the biggest issue was that they would run these. UVS Games goes to Gen Con. They go to all sorts of different conventions throughout the year. I'm trying to remember the name of the one they're at this weekend, and I'm blanking on it. But anyway, they're going all over the place, and they go to these events with people in tow to demo the game. And historically, demos haven't always gone well, frankly. And I've talked to other content creators at other events about how difficult they had as ingrained TCG players, how difficult of a time they had learning the game from the demos that were given, because there was a lot of it comes down to how much is going on in the cards. And how the demos are structured. So what we're going to look at today is the Attack on Titan demo deck. This is very similar to they actually have a non-IP branded one now, which is Hercules versus Sun Wukong, which is another version, but they printed an Attack on Titan specific one, of course, because that's going to be the major IP releasing later this year with 2 different sets. And they've made a number of changes to the demo experience, and I'm going to point those out here, as well as explain how these are different than the cards you're going to see in the Attack on Titan set proper. But what you're going to get is, if you go to your LGS and ask them to get in demo decks, or if you go to like Gen Con later this year and you go to demo the game at the booth, you're going to get demos with these decks. And this is how people are going to learn the game, and I think players are going to have a much easier time figuring the game out based on what they did here. So the first thing that I want to mention, as I was fanning through these cards, if you whether or not you've played the game before, you will notice that these cards are very low in text compared to, I'm trying to just grab some like similar typed cards here from my stack of My Hero cards. Here we go. So here I found a foundation. So here's a foundation from Girl Power, and here's a foundation from the Attack on Titan demo deck. And the first thing that you notice, I think, is that this has a lot of text, and this doesn't have a lot of text. You also might notice some things stylistically about it, and these are things that are going to be shared with the Attack on Titan set. But these cards are in the demo decks now are made to remove a lot of the text on the cards in the game, basically so that you can just kind of not get bogged down as you're learning the game with having to read every single card. The big issue I have to keep catching myself. The big issue with UniVersus is that when in a lot of games, take a look at games like Magic the Gathering, that's obviously the easy example here. Those games will start you off with play 1 land, and then maybe play 1 thing, play a 1-drop. Then next turn you play a 2nd land, and then you play a 2-drop. By turn 2, I'm just going to use turn 2 as an example. In turn 2, you have 2 cards out that are lands that don't do anything except you tap them for mana. You maybe have 1 or maybe 2 cards out that have effects that you built piecemeal one turn after another, and then they have like summoning sickness, and so only one of them can even attack on that 2nd turn. So games like that load you up with very few questions to start. They basically just, in fact, I would say games specifically with like growing resource systems, or they hold your hand a little bit as you go. And I don't mean that in like a pejorative way, but they just make it easier for you to make decisions from the very beginning, because you look at your hand and go, well, I can only do this. And then you do it. And then next turn, you're like, well, I could do either of these 2. And then you do one of them, and you can't do both. Comparatively, in the UniVersus TCG, and I will explain this for people who don't know the game at all, you're going to have a hand size based on your character, and from that hand size, you have the ability to attempt to play every single card that turn. You can just go for it. It's unlikely that you'll play every single card. 6 builds are pretty uncommon on turn 1. But they do happen, actually, occasionally. depending on hands and everything and the cards in your deck. But more likely you're going to play something like 4 to 5 of these cards in your hand on the first turn. And on the second turn, you're probably going to do something similar. Play 4 to 5 cards. It's often the case. And that means on your second turn, rather than having at most 2 things with effects in play and 2 cards that don't have effects, when you're looking at the cards in these sets proper, everything's got effects. Sometimes multiple effects on them. Plus you have a character in play that has multiple effects on it. And just comparatively to other card games, by turn 2, the board is super, super complex because not only do you have that, but your opponent can have up to like 8 cards in play at the same turn. We're talking about 18 different cards, counting characters, in play on both sides of the board on turn 2, compared to in Magic games at most 4 cards that have effects that you need to know when the game's playing. I mean, sometimes you have lands with effects too, but you know what I'm saying? It's still massively different, right? So players, understandably, when they're learning the game, just have a difficult time grasping that because they can't sit there. It's such a burden on your brain to just read every single card as you go and try and understand what all these do. Now, when you get to the game proper and you start to understand what all your effects are, this can be a wonderful thing. And I want to say very clearly that the team at UVS Games understands that this is a wonderful thing. The lead designer, Tim Friedlieb, has been designing this game for years, well before UVS Games took over. And he hasn't changed his philosophy on what's fun about the game. It's the game that he's been passionate about for an incredibly long time now, and he's still trying to build this game to meet that thing that he loves about the game. You have to remember that passion is there, but they're looking at ways to just streamline it, to make it more intuitive, and especially at this outset when you're first learning the game, to make this simple. So how does this do this? We remove the effects on many of the cards. Even attack cards have no effects on them. Now, not all of them, and actually, one thing I want to point out is that these demo decks have a number system down here. Look at this. This is 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, okay? And these are designed actually to be played in sequence. These are the cards you're supposed to draw in this order. So when you're doing the demo, we don't actually shuffle the decks. Instead, you're going to draw this opening hand, and it's going to be 6 foundations every single time. So you don't have to be like, well, okay, now let me look at your hand. Maybe you need to mulligan, maybe you drew too many attacks or whatever. And they directly actually sequence this out so that it starts you with difficulty going downward and kind of railroads. You like, take the first foundation in your hand and play it. And then make a check. And it has you check a 5. And then you play the second one and make a check. And you need a 3 to pass this one. And it has you pass a 3. And it has you pass a 3. And it has you pass a 3. These are designed to actually just like play out properly and then introduce you very slowly to new concepts as you're playing the game so that you can get them. So you can understand everything. There are cards with effects in here too. After you make your first like 4 checks, then you start to see foundations that show up that have effects on them. Now they're very simple effects. And I want to say too, every single card in this demo deck says it is not for tournament play. Okay, which means they know that they can't just stick 0 blocks on every single foundation in your deck. And it's a little unbalanced, but they intentionally make cards have 0 blocks as another method of just keeping the complexity lower as you're learning the game. But these effects are also simple too. Enhance commit, this attack gets +2 or -2 damage. You get to choose. Enhance commit, this attack gets +2 or -2 speed. You get to choose. It's pretty simple. It goes, this can do damage. This can do speed. But you, player, do you want to be offensive or do you want to be defensive? You get that choice, which I really like. And then the attacks are all mostly vanilla attacks here. Actually, excuse me. I think they're entirely vanilla attacks. There's every deck includes a haymaker play as well. Yeah, it's also vanilla. I just couldn't remember if it had a keyword on it of some kind. But so no hesitation is our haymaker attack in here. This is just going to be a 6 difficulty, 6 high for 6. But it's a high attack. It does a lot of damage. And then you can buff it with things. So They just set it up so that players will get the concept of playing foundations, get the concept of making checks, because honestly, this card pool thing, if you've never played this game before and you got really confused by that, this is one of the most difficult things to understand for a first-time player, because it is just completely different than how any other card game works using the card pool. But they introduce these ideas to you slowly, and then have you build into doing things, and have you build into using effects with a very simple enhance step, where there's not a lot to do. Just little enhances to use. And then they give you a character card with a few very particular aspects to it. It has, it's 6 hand size, which of course is kind of the medium hand size. Your characters, Aaron and Mikasa, both have 15 health. And again, this is not intended to be, this isn't like the new state of characters. This isn't what they're like. Trust me on that. But this 15 health is just intended to make the game not last forever. This demo game isn't supposed to take half an hour to play. It's supposed to take 10 minutes to get the demo at most. And by putting 15 health on the character, these demos can end conclusively, which is really nice. If I recall, the two characters are slightly different too. Aaron has commit, your attack gets +4 damage, so you can decide when, it just teaches you can decide when you want to use this, you commit them, you get the damage buff. And I believe Mikasa's is +4 speed as well. So there's a little bit of a difference there. You can see the difference in what happens when I buff speed versus what happens when I buff damage, and how that kind of affects how things play out. And that ultimately is, I mean, that's it. That's kind of the list of effects in this demo deck. But that's the point. The point is that what happened here is UVS Games identified one of their major problems, which is that players are not effectively learning the game well. And this will teach them the game. And then things that we'll see in the future, things that we had the absolute honor and privilege of being able to take kind of a sneak peek at the summit, things I can't talk about in any specifics. Things will be coming though that will take everything that that the player has learned and built on with this very simplified demo, and get them to go from this demo to this game in ways that I think will many new players will feel are intuitive and make sense and are exciting and make sense. And I really can't stress the excitement part, because these characters are exciting. Nobody wants this to change, including UVS Games. This kind of excitement isn't going anywhere. It's part and parcel of the game. And I can say for sure that was something that was stressed during that Influencer Summit, was how important it is to have this card game feel the way that it's supposed to and everything. It's equally important to attempt to make it so that when someone joins the game, they go to their local store, they see Critical Role, they see My Hero Academia, they see Godzilla, they see Attack on Titan, they see any other IP that is to come that they might get excited about, that they don't have their excitement entirely destroyed by getting a whole bunch of cards with a whole bunch of crazy effects that they just can't figure out. This is a foundation that has 3 effects on it, like this, there's so much stuff going on in the full game. And that's something that needs to be there. That's something that's exciting and good to be there, but it's not something that needs to be on your first experience. Now, one issue might be that, well, what if, what happens if they just pick up the demo deck and there's no one to teach the game to them? Well, I do think actually you can figure this game out with the online rules so much easier when the cards are simpler like this. But to go even one step deeper, these decks include a card with them that has a QR code, and you can actually scan this. This is live right now. This is their new Dized tutorial. It's a digital tutorial online that will teach you how to play the game. This tutorial is an excellent source, which means you can go to your LGS, you can pick up the demo decks, you can follow along. This is an interactive, it's not just a video. Dized, if you've never used it, it's used in many board games as an interactive tutorial where you're going to click along and you're going to actually engage with the game, which is for a lot of people, a much deeper form of learning than simply watching a how to play video. And you can follow along and learn how to play the game, and then you can immediately start playing with your demo deck and get a game in or two with your buddy and go, okay, I get how this game works. I understand. Now I'm going to pick up Godzilla and I'm going to start playing. I have been uncertain, frankly, about how to approach this looming problem of players just being unable to get into the game especially after the horror stories that I've heard from other content creators. But after getting to take a look at the demo and seeing what's to come and seeing this DICE tutorial and everything, I do think what we have here is a pretty solid solution, a really good start to starting to get players to actually understand this game and get into it, and hopefully then be able to stick it out and find that excitement and that joy that many of us who are UniVersus players have found in the game, that passion for the game that previously, if you just can't learn the game well enough, you just can't get to that stage. So that's really it. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the accessibility, about what the team is doing, and about these new demo decks. Every game is going to have different methods of trying to get players into their game, but few games are as complicated on the market right now to learn as UVS is. And I know I see a lot of people, I saw the memes with the going around the UniVersus sort of social media spaces about mental load and how difficult it is to learn games. And many people say things like, oh, Yu-Gi-Oh is harder. Yu-Gi-Oh does get complicated. And I'm going to tell you right now, like I've played every card game. Okay. Yu-Gi-Oh does get complicated. But it is not as complicated to learn, because while you can put a lot of cards down, it still isn't quite as many just raw effects as this, coupled with Yu-Gi-Oh has a simple system of put monster down, attack with monster. It doesn't have the card pool, okay? It doesn't have progressive difficulty. It doesn't have speed zones, block modifiers. It doesn't have the enhanced step. Honestly, that's one of the big ones. It doesn't have these card types that, like actions and assets, that work differently than how the most common cards that you see in your decks are. Of course, the demo decks don't even include those, because that's too complicated to include in there. There are a lot of things that just make it harder to learn UniVersus than I would say than any other card game on the market. I think this is currently the hardest card game to get into, but I think if you go to your LGS and you ask for these Attack on Titan demo decks, which they'll be able to start getting in shortly, you check out this DICE tutorial, I think you will pick the game up faster than you've ever been able to before as a new player. And then you'll be able to have an easier time moving to the really fun stuff, the stuff that we really love about the game. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about onboarding to the game, what you think about any upcoming changes to UniVersus, or maybe you've never played UniVersus before. Let me know what you think about these ideas as someone outside the UniVersus space as well. I would love to chat with you. This will be, I think, a really fun comment section if you guys do jump down there and engage in it. So please let me know all your thoughts down below. I'm really looking forward to reading them. Thank you so much for watching this. I'm looking forward to posting a lot more UniVersus content in the future, especially as this game has all these exciting sets and decks and IPs coming out with players able to get into the game a little more easily. It's going to be a ton of fun. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.